Have you ever felt like you were playing a part, like you were straddling two different worlds and belonged fully to neither? We all wear masks from time to time, at work, at family gatherings, perhaps even with our closest friends. We present a version of ourselves we think the world wants to see, but what happens when your entire life becomes a performance? When the line between who you are and who you're pretending to be begins to blur under the glare of 1,000 spotlights. This is the story of a woman who lived that reality every single day. A woman born into the fading grandeur of European aristocracy, who found fame on the glittering stages of Broadway, and who fought for a place among the most exclusive and unforgiving women in American history. Her name was Countess Elizabeth von Furstenberg Herdringen, but the world knew her as Betsy. And in the gilded cage of New York's high society, she was an exotic bird, a creature of immense beauty and talent. But to the circle's cruel and brilliant chronicler, Truman Capote, she was something else entirely. He watched her, he studied her, and he delivered a verdict as sharp and as cold as a shard of ice. Betsy, he once quipped with a devastating smile, is a swan in a stage dress, and the feathers fall off as soon as the scene is over. Was she a fraud, a talented actress playing the part of a lifetime? Or was she something far more complex and a survivor who used the stage to rebuild a life that war had torn apart? Today we pull back the curtain on the forgotten story of Betsy von Furstenberg, the reluctant swan whose performance may have been the most authentic thing about her. To understand Betsy, you first have to understand the world she was born into and the world that was stolen from her. She was born Countess Elizabeth Caroline, Maria Agatha Felicitas, Therese von Furstenberg Herdringen, on August 16, 1931, not just in Germany but into the very heart of the German aristocracy. The House of Furstenberg was ancient, a dynasty of princes and counts whose lineage stretched back into the mists of the Holy Roman Empire. Her early years were spent in a fairy tale setting, at Schloss Herdringen, a magnificent Gothic revival castle in Westphalia that looked as if it had been plucked from the pages of a Brothers Grimm story. This was a life of immense privilege, governed by the rigid protocols of the European nobility. It was a world of governesses, formal dinners, and the quiet, unshakable certainty that you were different, that you were better, simply by virtue of your birth. But this fairy tale was set in a darkening wood. The rise of the Nazi Party cast a long, ugly shadow over Germany. For the old aristocracy, it was a time of complex and often compromised choices. While some nobles eagerly embraced the new regime, many, like the Furstenbergs, regarded the Nazis with deep suspicion and aristocratic disdain. They were vulgar, common, and dangerous, but their power was absolute. Then came the war. The world of certainty and privilege was shattered by bombs and ideology. The end of the Second World War brought about a final, cataclysmic end to the Germany of Betsy's childhood. The grand estates were confiscated or destroyed, fortunes were wiped out, and an entire social order was dismantled. Suddenly, a title like Countess was no longer a guarantee of a secure future. For many, it became a relic, a beautiful but useless artifact from a lost civilization. For the teenage Countess Elizabeth, this wasn't an abstract historical event. It was the collapse of her entire world. She, along with her mother and siblings, became part of a wave of displaced European nobility who looked westward, toward the one place where old world titles were not just respected, but actively coveted: America. In 1948, with the ruins of her homeland behind her, Betsy arrived in New York City. She was a countess without a castle, an aristocrat without a court. She had her name, her breeding, and a fierce, unspoken determination to survive. She would need it, because the New World had its own set of rules, and she was about to break nearly all of them. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, New York City pulsed with an unparalleled vibrancy and optimism, standing as the unchallenged epicenter of a world emerging victorious from World War II. The city symbolized economic prosperity, cultural innovation, and social mobility in a post-war era marked by reconstruction and hope. For a young European émigré like Betsy von Furstenberg, who carried a noble title from her aristocratic German heritage, the conventional trajectory was straightforward and deeply rooted in tradition. Society expected her to secure her future through an advantageous marriage, ideally to an heir from one of America's prominent dynasties, such as the Vanderbilts, Rockefellers, or Fords. This approach would not only restore her family's diminished fortune, but also forge a strategic alliance that echoed the social maneuvers of the Gilded Age, reminiscent of the narratives in Edith Wharton's novels, albeit adapted to the mid-20th century's evolving norms. Such unions were seen as a practical means to blend Old World nobility with New World wealth, ensuring stability and status in a rapidly changing society. However, Betsy von Furstenberg defied these entrenched expectations, emerging not as a passive figure from a bygone era, but as a resilient modern woman profoundly influenced by the horrors of war and the disintegration of her familiar European world. Born into German aristocracy, she had experienced the upheavals of World War II firsthand, including the loss of family estates and the broader collapse of noble structures across Europe. These traumas instilled in her a desire for more than mere financial security or social positioning through matrimony. Instead, she sought personal fulfillment, autonomy, and an identity forged through her own efforts, independent of paternal or spousal influence. In a bold decision that shocked the remnants of European nobility and perplexed New York's elite social circles, Betsy chose to embark on a career as an actress. This path was viewed as scandalous and unbecoming for someone of her station, as the theater was often dismissed as vulgar, exhibitionistic, and beneath the dignity of titled individuals. It represented a descent into the commercial, unpredictable realm of entertainment, clashing sharply with the refined, insulated life of high society. Determined to treat her ambition with the utmost seriousness rather than as a fleeting aristocratic whim, Betsy enrolled at the prestigious Neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater in New York. There she studied under the renowned Sanford Meisner, the innovative acting coach who developed the Meisner technique, a method emphasizing emotional authenticity, instinctive responses, and living truthfully in imaginary circumstances. This rigorous training honed her skills in portraying complex emotions and transforming into diverse characters, providing her with tools that extended beyond the stage into navigating real-life challenges. Her commitment reflected an inner drive and intellectual depth that refused to be confined to the superficial interactions of drawing rooms or social gatherings, marking the beginning of her transformation from a countess defined by birthright to an artist shaped by discipline and talent. Betsy's perseverance paid off in 1951 when she secured her first significant role in the Broadway production of Second Threshold, a play originally penned by Philip Barry and posthumously completed by Robert E. Sherwood. The production featured the distinguished British actor Clive Brooke in a leading role, adding prestige to the endeavor. Betsy's inherent aristocratic elegance, combined with her subtle European accent that added an air of mystery and sophistication, made her a compelling presence on stage. Her performance garnered positive attention from critics, with Brooks Atkinson, of the New York Times, describing her as a handsome young lady with a flair for playing a part. This debut was a pivotal moment, allowing her to emerge from the constraints of her noble background and establish herself in the luminous world of Broadway theater, proving her capabilities to skeptics in both her old and new social spheres. Following her initial success, Betsy's career gained substantial momentum, positioning her as a reliable and admired figure in the Broadway scene, though she did not achieve the widespread fame associated with Hollywood stars. She appeared in several notable productions, including the comedic hit "O Men, O Women," which explored romantic entanglements with wit and charm, and "The King of Hearts," a play that showcased her versatility in dramatic roles. In these works, she shared the stage with seasoned actors such as Gig Young and Franchot Tone, holding her own with poise and skill that earned her respect among peers. By 1955, she took on a prominent role in Lillian Hellman's adaptation of the French play The Lark, which dramatized the life of Joan of Arc. Playing opposite the acclaimed Julie Harris, who portrayed Joan, Betsy contributed to the production's exploration of themes like faith, rebellion, and historical injustice, further solidifying her reputation as a thoughtful and capable performer. One of Betsy's most insightful and acclaimed performances came in 1955 with Enid Bagnold's psychologically intricate play, The Chalk Garden. In this production, she portrayed Laurel, a troubled and unusually mature teenager ensnared in the stifling atmosphere of a deteriorating aristocratic household. The narrative delved into motifs of concealed secrets, fabricated identities, and the tension between a tumultuous heritage and a facade of composure, elements that mirrored aspects of Betsy's own life. As a genuine countess navigating the remnants of a shattered European aristocracy, she brought an authentic depth to the character, who grappled with the burdens of a once grand but now dysfunctional family legacy. Critics lauded her interpretation, highlighting how she captured the nuances of internal conflict and emotional fragility, making the role a poignant reflection of her personal journey from privilege to self-reinvention. Through her acting career, Betsy achieved a level of financial independence and professional agency that eluded many women of her background, earning a steady income from her craft and building a reputation based on merit rather than lineage. Yet this choice indelibly marked her with the label of showbiz, which carried implications in New York's stratified social hierarchy. While she could attend elite gatherings and enjoy the allure of Broadway's glamour, true integration into either world remained elusive. The traditional European nobility regarded her as having compromised her status by entering the performative arts, while the merit-based theater community often viewed her through the lens of her Countess title, emphasizing her exotic origins over her artistic contributions. This duality positioned her as a perpetual outsider, skillfully balancing the faded grandeur of ancient European titles with the gritty democratic sparkle of American show business. The equilibrium was captivating but demanding, underscoring the personal sacrifices required to forge an authentic path in a society bound by rigid class distinctions. In 1951, Betsy von Furstenberg was simultaneously advancing her professional acting career and initiating what would become a recurring theme in her personal life, the pursuit of marriage. This year marked her Broadway debut, a significant milestone that showcased her talent and ambition in the theater world, drawing on her early training and determination to establish herself in the competitive New York scene. Concurrently, she entered into her first marriage with Guy Vincent de la Brosse, who worked as a French photographer's assistant, bringing a touch of European flair to her life amid the bustling American entertainment industry. This union was characterized by the impulsiveness and enthusiasm typical of youthful decisions, reflecting Betsy's optimistic approach to relationships, despite the challenges of balancing a budding career with personal commitments, including the pressures of public scrutiny as an up-and-coming actress. The marriage, however, proved short-lived, lasting only 3 years before dissolving in divorce, a process that likely involved emotional turmoil and legal proceedings that tested her resilience. During this period, the couple welcomed their first child, a son named Glenn, adding a layer of family responsibility to Betsy's already demanding life as an emerging actress, where she had to juggle rehearsals, performances, and motherhood without the full support of a stable partnership. This early matrimonial experience highlighted her resilience and determination as she navigated the emotional and practical complexities of a failed marriage while continuing to build her professional identity, refusing to let personal setbacks derail her theatrical aspirations. By 1954, Betsy's first marriage had ended, leaving her to reflect on the brief and ultimately unsuccessful partnership that had begun with such promise but unraveled due to incompatibilities or the strains of her career demands. The divorce after just 3 years underscored the fleeting nature of her initial impulsive choice, yet it did not deter her from pursuing love and stability with a renewed vigor, demonstrating a pattern of relentless optimism that would define her approach to relationships throughout her life. This transitional phase in her life was marked by a persistent optimism that bordered on desperation, as she repeatedly invested in the idea of marriage as a foundational project alongside her career, viewing it not just as a personal bond, but as a means to achieve emotional and social fulfillment. Freed from the constraints of her first union, Betsy was poised for a new chapter, one that would dramatically elevate her social and financial standing, allowing her to leverage her experiences from the past to make more strategic choices moving forward. The experience of this early divorce, while undoubtedly challenging and perhaps involving custody arrangements for young Glenn, equipped her with insights into relationships that she carried forward, maintaining her role as a mother to Glenn and continuing her work in acting without interruption, all while seeking a partner who could match her ambitions and provide the security she craved. The pivotal turning point in Betsy's personal and social trajectory came in 1954 with her second marriage to Patrick Guinness, a union that represented a significant upgrade in both status and stability compared to her previous experiences. This alliance was far from ordinary. It connected her to one of the most prominent and affluent families in the world, whose legacy was built on generations of success and influence. The Guinness name evoked images of immense dynastic wealth derived from their Irish brewing empire, which had expanded into a global enterprise with extensive social networks spanning continents, including ties to European aristocracy and American high society. Marrying Patrick not only provided Betsy with a profound sense of financial security, reminiscent of her privileged childhood in Germany, where she had grown up amid nobility and luxury before the disruptions of World War II, but also integrated her into elite international circles that opened doors to exclusive opportunities and connections. As Mrs. Patrick Guinness, she embraced multiple roles: a dedicated society hostess, organizing elegant gatherings at their homes or events that showcased her poise and hospitality skills, a nurturing mother, balancing family life with her public persona, and a persistent working actress who refused to abandon her professional aspirations despite the temptations of a life of leisure. The marriage yielded 2 children, a daughter named Victoria and a son named Lowell, further solidifying her family life and creating a blended household that included her son from the first marriage. This period represented a harmonious blend of personal fulfillment and societal elevation, where Betsy's relentless pursuit of marital stability finally aligned with substantial rewards, allowing her to thrive in both domestic and public spheres while enjoying the privileges that came with her new status, such as access to high-profile events and influential figures. During her marriage to Patrick Guinness in the mid-1950s, Betsy meticulously cultivated the sophisticated persona that would define her public image and cement her status as a fashion icon, drawing on her theatrical background to craft an appearance that was both authentic and performative. This era saw her honing an aesthetic that combined theatrical flair with aristocratic poise, earning her a coveted spot on the International Best Dressed list, a prestigious accolade in the fashion realm that affirmed her influence among the global elite and was often seen as a benchmark for style excellence in magazines and social commentaries of the time. Photographs from this time capture a woman whose style was both deliberate and captivating. She favored designs from renowned couturiers like Balenciaga and Givenchy, wearing them with an actress's keen awareness of dramatic lines, silhouettes, and movement that enhanced her presence in any setting, while maintaining the upright, refined posture of someone born into nobility, a posture honed from her early years in Germany. Betsy's appearance defied conventional beauty standards, unlike the soft, ethereal elegance of figures like Grace Kelly, whose appeal lay in delicate femininity. Her features were bolder and more angular, conveying intelligence, strength, and a subtle undercurrent of melancholy in her gaze that added depth and intrigue to her overall allure. This unique blend created a paradoxical allure, part performer, part aristocrat, that intrigued high society, as it suggested a woman who was not just beautiful, but intellectually engaging and resilient, having overcome personal and historical adversities. Her ability to project this image was not innate, but refined through experience, reflecting her background as a German countess turned Broadway star, now enhanced by her Guinness connections, and it involved careful selection of wardrobe, accessories, and even mannerisms to create a cohesive narrative of glamour. As Betsy's life stabilized in the mid-1950s, she fully immersed herself in the upper echelons of international society, where her multifaceted identity as a titled German countess, accomplished Broadway actress, and wife of a Guinness heir made her an object of fascination and admiration among the elite. It was in this glittering world that she crossed paths with Truman Capote, the acclaimed writer known for his sharp observations of human nature, social dynamics, and the intricacies of class and personality, often drawing from his own experiences in high society for his literary works. Capote encountered Betsy at the pinnacle of her social ascent. She was a regular fixture at exclusive dinners hosted by influential figures, prestigious clubs where the powerful mingled, and in prominent gossip columns that chronicled the lives of the famous, embodying the qualities his circle revered: nobility through her Countess title, beauty that was striking and unconventional, and an inexhaustible intrigue derived from her diverse life story. Her invitations to elite events underscored her acceptance into this rarefied environment, yet an underlying distinction set her apart from contemporaries like Babe Paley and C.Z. Guest, who were celebrated for their seamless integration into society. These women exuded an effortless grace born from lifelong privilege, a serenity that required no exertion, and appeared as natural as breathing, stemming from never having to strive for acceptance. In contrast, Betsy's glamour carried the hallmarks of careful cultivation. It was polished to perfection, with the crisp precision of a rehearsed stage performance rather than spontaneous ease, evident in the way she composed herself, selected her words, and curated her appearances to maximize impact. Truman Capote, whose own existence revolved around dissecting the intricacies of behavior and status with a novelist's eye for detail, keenly perceived the artistry behind Betsy's facade, recognizing it as a product of deliberate effort rather than inherent entitlement. He recognized the effort, the work, and rehearsal that underpinned her poised exterior, distinguishing her from those whose elegance appeared innate and effortless. And this perception likely stemmed from his own outsider status in elite circles, where he too had to perform to belong. This observation stemmed from Capote's acute sensitivity to social subtleties. He saw beyond the surface to the deliberate construction of her image, which blended her theatrical training with her aristocratic heritage, creating a persona that was both authentic to her experiences and strategically enhanced for social navigation. Unable to resist labeling this phenomenon, Capote coined a term that encapsulated Betsy's unique brand of practiced sophistication, highlighting how her glamour, while mesmerizing and effective in captivating audiences, bore the invisible marks of intention and ambition that set her apart in a world that valued subtlety. This insight added depth to her societal role, portraying her not merely as a participant in high society, but as a masterful performer within it, whose relentless optimism in both career and marriage had forged a persona that captivated and intrigued observers like Capote, ultimately contributing to her enduring legacy in cultural narratives. To fully understand Betsy von Furstenberg's place in high society and her complex relationship with Truman Capote's circle of swans, it is essential to start with her mother's background, as this familial history forms the foundation of Betsy's overlooked personal narrative. Betsy's mother was Gloria Rubio Chapoy a la Torre, a woman of extraordinary beauty and social ambition born in Mexico, whose life was marked by a series of strategic marriages that elevated her status across international elite circles. Gloria Rubio's second marriage was to Count Franz Egon von Furstenberg Herdringen, a German aristocrat. This union produced one daughter, Betsy von Furstenberg, born in 1931. After this marriage ended, Gloria's ambition led her to her fourth and most prominent marriage in 1951 to Lowell Guinness, a British banking heir. With this union, she became the internationally famous socialite Gloria Guinness, a woman revered for her impeccable, effortless style and a quintessential member of the high society that Truman Capote chronicled. This created an incredibly complex and dramatic family dynamic. In 1954, just 3 years after her mother married Lowell Guinness, Betsy married Patrick Guinness, Lowell's son from a previous marriage. This meant that Gloria Guinness was simultaneously Betsy's mother and her stepmother-in-law. The two women, mother and daughter, now moved in the same exclusive social sphere, linked by a tangled web of marriage and blood. As mother and daughter navigated the same elite social circles during the mid-20th century, their differences became increasingly pronounced. Gloria Guinness epitomized the ideal of natural, understated chic that defined the era's most admired women. Her style was characterized by minimalism and a confidence that required no embellishment. Gloria never engaged in paid work. Her existence was an art form in itself, and she was a close friend to designers like Balenciaga and Givenchy. In the eyes of contemporaries, including Truman Capote, she represented the genuine article, a woman whose sophistication was innate and unforced. Betsy von Furstenberg, on the other hand, navigated a more performative path. While equally beautiful and stylish, her life involved active participation in the entertainment industry. This career demanded a theatrical flair, and it also meant she had to earn her living. Betsy's social engagements often intersected with her professional ones, leading to a perception that her elegance was somewhat staged or amplified for effect. The family dynamics between mother and daughter, though not publicly tumultuous, likely involved subtle comparisons at society events. Gloria as the serene icon of restraint, and Betsy as the vibrant working countess whose presence carried a hint of performance. By the 1950s and 1960s, both mother and daughter had entered the orbit of Truman Capote. Gloria Guinness was unequivocally one of Capote's most revered swans, admired for her unadulterated grace. Capote's affection for her was evident in his writings, where he portrayed her as a paragon of authenticity. Betsy von Furstenberg, while also part of this glittering world, occupied a more peripheral position. Her acting career and reliance on her title for professional gain placed her slightly on the outside in Capote's discerning view. This dynamic culminated in Capote's infamous quip about Betsy, describing her as a swan in a costume drama. Delivered in the context of his sharp-witted observations, this remark was not merely a standalone critique, but a devastatingly pointed comparison. It implied that Betsy's elegance appeared contrived, like a theatrical prop, in contrast to the organic, effortless poise of the other swans, most notably her own mother. The quip gained its devastating edge from this unspoken familial link, suggesting that Betsy was perpetually being measured against Gloria's standard. This complex mother-daughter connection cast a persistent shadow over Betsy von Furstenberg's entire life, reframing her experiences in society and explaining the subtle condescension she encountered. Rather than being evaluated solely on her own accomplishments, her successful acting career, her beauty, and her social charm, Betsy was inevitably compared to her mother, one of the century's most formidable style icons. This familial benchmark likely contributed to her sense of being an outsider among the swans, where authenticity was prized above all. The revelation of this bond unlocks the deeper layers of Betsy's story, revealing how personal history intertwined with public perception to create a narrative of quiet rivalry and unacknowledged influence. Betsy von Furstenberg's life was marked by a series of marriages that began with her union to Patrick Guinness, a member of the renowned brewing family. This marriage, which positioned her within elite social circles, ultimately dissolved in divorce in 1965. The dissolution of this relationship set the stage for what would become a pattern of serial matrimony, often scrutinized by society as erratic or impulsive. However, when viewed through the lens of her personal history and the pressures of her performative existence, this pattern reveals a deeper quest for stability and authenticity. Betsy, born into a world of high expectations and constant comparisons, particularly with her more prominent mother, Gloria Guinness, found herself navigating a life where personal identity was intertwined with a public persona. The end of her marriage to Guinness marked not just a personal turning point, but the beginning of a relentless pursuit for a sense of solidity in relationships, amid a backdrop of glamour and scrutiny that demanded perpetual performance. Following her divorce from Patrick Guinness, Betsy entered into a succession of marriages, totaling 5 husbands over the course of her life. This sequence began with J. Anthony Forstmann, a figure from a distinguished family involved in wool trading and finance, whose background promised a blend of tradition and economic security. Next came John Simon, the renowned and often feared theater and film critic, whose position at the center of her own professional world added a complex and dramatic layer to her life story. This pattern continued until her final marriage to William S. Coblentz, a prominent San Francisco lawyer known for his influence in legal and political circles. This last marriage provided a semblance of the permanence she appeared to seek, enduring for over 30 years, from their wedding in 1984 until her death in 2015. Society often labeled this matrimonial history as flighty or even scandalous, painting Betsy as a whimsical figure, flitting from one partner to another. Yet a closer examination suggests it was far from capricious. Rather, it embodied a persistent search for something tangible and reliable in a life perpetually shaped by artifice, performance, and the weight of familial comparisons. Each marriage can be interpreted as an attempt to adopt a new role or script, one that might finally align with her inner self, free from the exhausting demands of being on stage constantly. Was this driven by a desire for genuine love, or was it an effort to forge a stable identity that didn't require her to embody the archetypal society figure? In a late-life interview, when probed about her multiple marriages, Betsy delivered a response laced with her signature sharp wit and a hint of defensiveness. "I'm a good wife. I'm just not a good widow." This quip, reminiscent of a seasoned actress deflecting vulnerability with humor, transformed a potentially probing question into a light-hearted dismissal, underscoring her skill in managing personal narratives through performative deflection. Throughout her life, Betsy's interactions in social settings highlighted the tension between her authentic self and the roles she played. She was renowned for her exceptional wit and intelligence, making her an indispensable guest at dinner parties and gatherings among New York's elite. The writer and socialite Dominic Dunn described her as a great raconteur, emphasizing her ability to captivate audiences with compelling stories delivered with impeccable timing and flawless execution. These skills, however, were not mere natural talents, but extensions of her theatrical training, refined on the Broadway stage and repurposed for the salons and drawing rooms of Park Avenue. In these environments, Betsy transformed social engagements into performances, where her charisma held court, yet this very prowess hinted at an underlying exhaustion. The constant need to entertain and impress, mirroring the comparative shadows cast by her mother's more central role in high society. One particularly revealing anecdote from her career illustrates this dynamic. During the run of one of her plays, an interviewer inquired whether her real-life status as a countess aided her in portraying aristocratic characters on stage. Betsy's cool response, "On the contrary, being an actress helps me play a real-life countess," stands as a profound, if apocryphal, admission. It exposes the constructed nature of her public identity. The persona of Countess von Furstenberg, the polished society matron, was itself a meticulously studied and enacted role. This insight reveals how her acting background equipped her to navigate the demands of high society, where authenticity often gave way to performance, and personal fulfillment was sought amid layers of expectation. In 1966, Betsy's life intersected with one of the most iconic events in New York society's history: Truman Capote's legendary black and white ball at the Plaza Hotel. As a guest on the exclusive list, she arrived masked in exuding elegance, captured in photographs that immortalized her as part of the glittering spectacle. This masquerade ball, with its theme of monochrome opulence, epitomized the performative essence of elite social life, attendees donning disguises while vying for visibility in a world of hierarchies. Betsy was undoubtedly a participant in this grand theater, embodying the grace and poise expected of her station. However, her role at the event underscored the subtle hierarchies within this world. She was not the guest of honor. That distinction went to Catherine Graham, the influential publisher. Nor was she among the central figures Capote fawned over throughout the night, such as the true swans, Babe Paley, Morella Agnelli, Lee Radziwill, and, notably, her own mother, Gloria Guinness. These women occupied the spotlight, orbiting Capote as leading ladies in the evening's drama. Betsy, by contrast, blended into the shimmering crowd, a supporting character rather than a star. This positioning at the ball mirrored broader patterns in her life, present and polished, yet often overshadowed, fueling her ongoing search for a narrative where she could claim the center stage without the burden of perpetual comparison. Betsy von Furstenberg was born into a world of privilege as a German countess, but her adolescence was marked by profound upheaval. As a teenager during the turbulent years surrounding World War II, she experienced the devastating loss of her country, her family home, and her inherited fortune. This period of exile forced her into a state of displacement, stripping away the security and status that had defined her early years. Thrown into uncertainty, she had to rely solely on her aristocratic title, a remnant of her past, and her own intelligence and resourcefulness to navigate an entirely new reality. This foundational experience of loss shaped her worldview, instilling in her a deep understanding of vulnerability and the necessity of adaptation, themes that would recur throughout her life. The emotional toll of such displacement cannot be understated. It transformed a young girl accustomed to opulence into someone who viewed every opportunity as a potential lifeline, fostering a resilience that blended pragmatism with quiet determination. Upon arriving in America, Betsy found herself in a foreign land with limited resources beyond her noble title, which served as a unique form of social currency. Rather than viewing acting as a downgrade from her aristocratic background, she embraced it as an opportunity for empowerment and upward mobility. It provided her with a means to achieve financial independence, allowing her to earn her own money and construct an identity that was not wholly dependent on her family heritage or future marital prospects. This transition into showbiz was pragmatic. It granted her agency in a society where women of her era often had few avenues for self-sufficiency. Her title opened doors to social circles, but it was her honed skills on stage that began to define her public persona, blending her inherited nobility with a performative flair that she cultivated deliberately. In this new environment, she learned to leverage her background strategically, turning what could have been a liability, her foreign roots and lost wealth, into assets that set her apart in the competitive worlds of theater and high society. Throughout the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s, Betsy's career as an actress flourished, demonstrating her genuine talent and unwavering determination. She appeared in numerous stage productions, where her presence and poise captivated audiences, earning her roles that required both dramatic depth and elegant charm. Transitioning to television, she took on parts that showcased her versatility, including a notable stint on the popular soap opera As the World Turns, where she portrayed characters with nuance and emotional layers drawn from her own life experiences. This was not merely a hobby for a socialite. It was a sustained professional endeavor that spanned decades, involving rigorous rehearsals, memorization of scripts, and adaptation to evolving media formats. Her success in these mediums underscored her tenacity as she balanced the demands of performance with the expectations tied to her title. In this phase, she established herself as a professional actress who also navigated high society, rather than the reverse, a critical distinction that highlighted her commitment to her craft over mere dabbling. Her ability to sustain such a career amid personal challenges speaks to her discipline and passion for acting as a form of self-expression. Betsy's personal life unfolded alongside her career, marked by multiple marriages that became fodder for scrutiny and analysis. These unions were often interpreted through a cynical lens, seen as calculated alliances aimed at securing social and financial stability rather than purely romantic endeavors. Critics pointed to them as evidence of her alleged social climbing, suggesting that she leveraged her title and stage persona to ascend in elite circles, perhaps viewing each marriage as a step toward reclaiming the stability she had lost in youth. However, a deeper examination reveals these relationships as part of her broader strategy for survival in a world that demanded constant adaptation. Unlike women from established American wealth such as Gloria Vanderbilt or socialite Babe Paley, Betsy did not have the cushion of unassailable spousal fortunes to fall back on. Her partner's statuses provided varying degrees of support, but she always maintained her own professional pursuits. Her marriages, therefore, can be viewed as pragmatic choices in a life where she had to actively work to maintain her position and glamour, reflecting a blend of emotional needs and practical considerations, rather than cold opportunism. The core controversy of Betsy's life emerged as a subtle existential question about her authenticity, rather than an overt scandal like an affair or crime. This debate crystallized around perceptions of her as either a fraud or a resilient survivor, particularly highlighted by Truman Capote's acerbic comment labeling her a theatrical creation. On one side, detractors argued that her showbiz background and polished demeanor rendered her an outsider in elite society, someone who mimicked the effortless elegance of true aristocrats, but never fully embodied it. Her title granted entry, but her persona was seen as contrived, a product of ambition rather than innate grace, with her acting skills amplifying an image that felt performative rather than genuine. This view painted her as a perpetual performer, using inherited status and stage techniques to craft an illusion of belonging, always one step removed from true acceptance. Conversely, a more compassionate and arguably truer perspective portrays Betsy as a pragmatist forged by adversity. Having endured profound losses in her youth, she approached life with a survivor's mindset, utilizing her title as a tool for navigation in America. Her enactment of the Countess was not deceitful, but essential for endurance. It aligned with societal expectations, while allowing her to forge her path through hard work and ingenuity. Unlike her effortlessly glamorous peers, whose lives rested on stable wealth and did not require labor, Betsy's allure was hard-won through her own efforts, making her achievements all the more authentic in their earned quality. In her later years, Betsy's own words provided profound insight into the interplay between her personal and professional selves, offering a window into her inner world beyond public perceptions. She once reflected, "Acting is the most personal of our crafts. The make-believe is born in the heart of the actor." This statement reveals the emotional depth behind her performances, both on stage and in society, suggesting that the boundaries between her roles were fluid yet rooted in genuine experiences of loss, ambition, and the universal human impulses to project strength amid fragility. For Betsy, portraying the elegant swan was not mere artifice, but her most challenging role, demanding she maintain a composed facade even as life's challenges, such as personal setbacks or societal judgments, persisted behind the scenes. Ultimately, Her legacy endures as that of a woman who transformed adversity into a multifaceted identity, blending survival with artistry in a way that defied simplistic judgments. Her story invites deeper analysis of how authenticity is constructed, especially for those without the privileges of effortless inheritance, positioning her not as a fraud, but as a testament to human adaptability and the power of self-reinvention. So, why does the story of Betsy von Furstenberg still resonate today? What is her legacy? In an age obsessed with personal branding, with carefully curated Instagram feeds and the performance of an idealized life, Betsy's story feels astonishingly modern. She was, in many ways, one of the original architects of the performed self. Her life demonstrates that identity is not always a fixed inherited thing. It can be a conscious creation, a role we choose to play. She challenges our romantic notions of the aristocracy and high society. We tend to think of Capote's swans as perfect ethereal beings. But Betsy's story reminds us that even within that gilded cage, there were complex, working, and sometimes struggling human beings. She pulls back the curtain and shows us the effort behind the elegance, the work behind the wonder. Her significance also lies in what she represents as a transitional figure. She was a bridge between the old world of European aristocracy and the new world of American celebrity culture. She proved that it was possible to carry a 12th century title and still appear on a 20th century television set. She blended the two worlds in a way that was unique, creating a hybrid identity that was all her own. And what can we learn from her? Perhaps we can learn about resilience. This was a woman who survived the collapse of her country, navigated the treacherous waters of New York society, built a career in a demanding profession, and endured the heartbreak of multiple divorces. Through it all, she maintained her dignity, her wit, and her impeccable style. She never stopped trying, never stopped reinventing herself, never stopped performing. Ultimately, her story forces us to reconsider Capote's famous quote. He meant it as an insult, a dismissal. He meant to say her feathers were fake, but maybe he was wrong, or at least maybe he missed the point. In the theater, a costume is not a lie. It is a tool that helps create a truth. It allows the actor to embody a character, to tell a story. Betsy von Furstenberg's life was a masterclass in using the costumes of nobility, fashion, and glamour to tell a remarkable story of survival and self-creation. The feathers may have been part of a role, but the strength and intelligence of the woman wearing them were undeniably real. In the end, it doesn't really matter if the feathers were real or not. What matters is that she flew. Betsy von Furstenberg was born a countess, but she made herself a star. She lived in the shadow of giants, a collapsing old world, a legendary mother, a circle of untouchable socialites. But she carved out her own space with talent, wit, and sheer force of will. She was the swan in the costume drama, yes. But we forget that the drama itself was her life. And in that drama, she wasn't just an actress reading lines written by others. She was the writer, the director, and the lead performer in a spectacular one-woman show that ran for 83 years. The curtain may have fallen, but the performance was unforgettable. Her feathers, whether real or theatrical, never truly molted. They simply became part of a complex and beautiful legend.